When it comes to the topic of women in science, Marie Curie usually dominates the conversation. After all, she discovered two elements, was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in 1903, and was the first person to win a second Nobel in 1911. But Curie was not the first female scientist. Many other brilliant, dedicated, and determined women have pursued science over the years. These are their stories. Émilie du Châtelet. Emily was born to a French aristocratic family during the 1700s, and by such, she was expected to marry and become a respectable housewife and a loving mother. But Emily's ambitions stretched far beyond that. Emily found her passion in linguistics, mathematics, and science. She learned English, German, Latin, and Spanish at a very young age. She married at the age of 19 and had 3 children. However, she did not leave her ambitions aside while being a mother. She used her mathematical skills to gamble with other aristocrats and usually won. The winnings always went to buying books and topics she had interest in. At age 27, as she began studying mathematics and physics seriously, she began a 15-year affair with the philosopher Voltaire. With Voltaire, she collaborated in the writing of the book The Philosophy of Newton, and in experiments with fire that eventually developed into infrared technology, and with kinetic energy that eventually developed into the famous formula E equals mc squared. Her most famous publication is her French translation of Newton's Principia, which is still in use today. Caroline Herschel. Although early in her life she was a household drudge for her parents and later her brother, Caroline was more than the Cinderella of the family. Her brother, William, an organist for the Octagon Chapel, taught her how to sing and later invited her as a chorist for the chapel. William switched careers and went into astronomy, and Caroline followed. In addition to assisting her brother in his observations and the building of telescopes, Caroline became a brilliant astronomer in her own right, discovering new nebulae and star clusters. She is known for being the first woman to discover a comet, although later she discovered 7 more, and the first to have her work published by the Royal Society. Notable also, she was also the first woman to get paid for her scientific work in Britain. Her brother discovered the planet Uranus, and she received many honors during her life for incrementing the catalog of nebulae from 100 to 2500. Mary Anning. In 1811, Mary Anning's brother spotted what he thought was a crocodile skeleton in a seaside cliff near the family's Lyme Regis, England home. He charged his 11-year-old sister with its recovery, and she eventually dug out a skull and 60 vertebrae, selling them to a private collector. This find was no crocodile though, and was eventually named Ichthyosaurus, the fish lizard. Thus began Anning's long career as a fossil hunter. In addition to Ichthyosaurus, she found long-necked Plesiosaurus, a pterodactyl, and thousands of other fossils that helped scientists to draw a picture of the marine world from 200 million to 140 million years ago. Maria Mitchell. Young Maria Mitchell learned to observe the stars from her father, who used stellar observations to check the accuracy of chronometers for Nantucket, Massachusetts whalers, and taught his children to use a sextant and reflecting telescope. When Mitchell was 12, she helped her father record the time of an eclipse, and at 17 she had already begun her own school for girls, teaching them science and math. But Mitchell rocketed to the forefront of American astronomy in 1847 when she spotted a blurry streak, a comet, through her telescope. She was honored around the world, earning a medal from the King of Denmark, and became the first woman to be elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. In 1857, Mitchell traveled to Europe, where she visited observatories and met with intellectuals, including Mary Somerville. Mitchell would write, "I could not help but admire her as a woman. The accent of the steeped and rough path of science has not unfitted her for the drawing-room circle. The hours of devotion to close study have not been incompatible with the duties of wife and mother. Mitchell became the first female astronomy professor in the United States when she was hired by Vassar College in 1865. There she continued her observations, particularly those of the sun, traveling up to 2,000 miles to witness an eclipse. Rosalind Franklin. James Watson and Francis Crick get credit for determining the structure of DNA, but their discovery relied on the work of Rosalind Franklin. As a teenager in the 1930s, Franklin attended one of the few girls' schools in London that taught physics and chemistry, but when she told her father that she wanted to be a scientist, he rejected the idea. He eventually relented and she enrolled at Cambridge University, receiving a doctorate in physical chemistry. She learned techniques for X-ray crystallography while in Paris, returning to England in 1951 to work in the laboratory of John Randall at King's College, London. There she made X-ray images of DNA. She had nearly figured out the molecule structure when Maurice Wilkins, another researcher in Randall's lab who was also studying DNA, showed one of Franklin's X-ray images to James Watson. Watson quickly figured out the structure was a double helix and, with Francis Crick, published the finding in the journal Nature. Watson, Crick, and Wilkins won a Nobel Prize in 1962 for their discovery. Franklin, however, had died of ovarian cancer in 1958.